When you folks are done clapping for me, you can clap for the senator. Welcome everybody, my name is Rod Sullivan. I'm a member of the Johnson County Board of Supervisors, and it's my honor and privilege to be here today to introduce Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont. Before we get started, just a couple very quick things. Obviously, we could have used a lot bigger room. This is what we got. We apologize for how crowded it is. It's a good problem to have. I want to real quickly introduce the elected officials that are with us. From the Board of Supervisors, Mike Carberry. My state senator, Senator Joe Bolcom is with us. From the office of Congressman Dave Loebsack, we have Dave Lesh. Okay, really quickly. The Iowa caucuses are still 8 or 9 months away, depending on what they move the date to. When they come, I'm going to be standing with Senator Sanders, and I want to tell you why. He's fought for single-payer health care. He's advocated for our veterans. He's voted against both Iraq wars. Against the Patriot Act. He has voted to break up the big banks. He filibustered the Bush tax cut extension. And you know what? That's not even why I'm supporting him. We have 3 critical things happening right now, and Senator Sanders is going to talk about these. We have a broken campaign finance system where money is supposed to equal speech. We have income inequality that is as great as it's ever been in our country's history. And on top of all of that, we've got climate change that threatens our very way of life. One person running for president is talking about those 3 issues, and that is Senator Bernie Sanders.
Hey, thanks, Ron. You just gave my whole speech. This is an incredible turnout, and I want to thank all of you for being here. I think maybe we're touching a nerve. We had 700 people out in Davenport the other day. I don't have to be down here, but it's a lot. Let me tell you what we'll do this morning. We're going to do something extremely radical, which is to practice democracy. How's that? What we'll do here is what I have done on hundreds and hundreds of occasions in my state of Vermont. Is I'm going to talk for a while, and then you're going to talk, you'll ask me questions, we'll make some comments, and that's what we do. What I want to touch on is the most important issues facing our country. And let me start off with the point that Rod made. It's important also to understand that the issues that are most important, that really impact millions of people, are not necessarily the issues that you see on the front pages of the paper, and certainly not on TV. And we can't allow them to influence our view of what is most important. So let me start off with a simple question. In America today, right now, we have more wealth and income inequality than in any major industrialized nation on earth, and it is worse today than at any time since 1929. Now, what are the moral implications of a situation, I'm talking about morality now, of a situation where the top 1/10 of 1% owns more wealth than the bottom 90%? What does it mean that one family in America, the Walton family, owns more wealth than the bottom 130 million Americans? What does it mean that in the last 2 years, the 14 wealthiest people in this country, Gates and Buffett, the Koch brothers and those guys, saw their wealth increase by $157 billion, which is more wealth than it is owned by the bottom 40% of Americans. What does it mean that today, millions and millions of people go to work every day? 99% of all of the new income is going to the top 1%, at the same time as we have the highest rate of childhood poverty of any major country on earth. What does it mean that for the last 40 years, the middle class of this country has been disappearing, and most of the new jobs that have been created pay workers wages that are inadequate, and many of these jobs are part-time jobs? Is that the kind of economy that is moral?
No.
Is it sustainable? Is that what America is about?
No.
And we got to throw that issue out there. And then, then it becomes complicated. How do you deal with that issue? But we cannot go forward as a nation unless we put the issues bluntly and honestly on the table. And that is the first issue. How do you create an economy that works well for all of our people? Let me talk about a second issue. So while the rich get richer and most everybody else gets poorer, what we are dealing with now, as Rod indicated, is a disastrous Supreme Court decision on Citizens United, which says to the wealthiest people in this country, congratulations, you own much of the economy, but now we're going to let you buy the United States government. Because you can now spend as much money as you like on campaigns. And what is the reality of that? The reality is that the billionaire class, people like the Koch brothers, Sheldon Adelson, are prepared to spend billions of dollars combined to buy the United States government and state governments all over this country. There was an article a few months ago that suggested that the Koch brothers themselves will spend more money on this campaign than either the Democratic or Republican parties. Now, I don't know about you, but it is not my understanding that American democracy is supposed to be about billionaires buying elections. What American democracy is supposed to be about is one person, one vote, which is why we got to overturn the Supreme Court. I would hope, regardless of our political views, that every American wants to see a vibrant democracy, not a democracy such as we saw last November, when 63% of the American people didn't even bother to vote, 80% of young people didn't vote. What I want to see is a democracy where people are debating and talking and understand the major issues. We can disagree with each other. That's America. That's the beauty of a democracy. But we've got to know what's going on. We've got to be participating in the political process. So not only should, in my view, we overturn Citizens United, if we want young people, middle-class people, working-class people to be able to run for office, regardless of their views, we need to move to public funding of elections. I want a country not where 63% of the people don't vote. That's not the country I want. I want a country where 80, 90% of the people vote, where we have serious debates on serious issues. And then there's another issue. It's an issue that obviously cannot be ignored. And that is the future of our planet. And while, I am probably the most progressive member of the United States Senate, and I disagree with the Republicans on virtually every issue. But there is an issue where it is not a question of disagreement. You can disagree about how much you spend on education and so forth and so on. But as a nation, and you here in the university community, understand you cannot reject science. You cannot reject science. You can't. develop serious public policy if you reject what the people who know the most about an issue are telling us. Republicans don't reject the science on cancer research. They don't reject the science on diabetes. We have doctors, we have scientists that work on a lot of those issues. But when it comes to climate change, what they are doing is rejecting what almost unanimously the American and world scientific community is telling us. And what are they telling us? They're telling us, of course, that climate change is real, that it is caused by human activity, that it is already causing devastating problems in our country and all over the world. They are telling us that we have a very short window of opportunity before real devastation takes place. They are telling us that if we don't get our act together and business continues as usual, by the end of this century, if you can believe it, the planet Earth will be between 5 degrees and 10 degrees centigrade warmer. Can you believe that? And what that will mean, and the planet that we'll be leaving to our kids and our grandchildren, is more drought, more floods, more extreme weather disturbances, rising sea levels, acidification of the ocean, huge national security issues, because people around the world will not be having the food they need and migrating, and all kinds of conflict develops. That's the world we're looking at if we don't get our act together. And my Republican colleagues, not only are they not serious about addressing the issue, they're refusing to recognize this issue, which, by the way, takes us right back to campaign finance reform. Because if you think it is an accident that the vast majority of Republicans in Congress reject science, you're wrong. It has everything in the world to do with the power and the money of the Koch brothers, who make huge sums of money in fossil fuel, of big energy, and of all those people who are more concerned about quick profits in fossil fuels than they are about the future of this country. Where do we go from here? And let me be very clear in telling you what no other member of the Senate will tell you, and no other candidate for President of the United States will tell you. And it's bad news and it's good news. The bad news is that no matter who is President of the United States, if you're the smartest person in the world, the most honest, the most dedicated, the most hardworking, whatever it is, that person, if elected tomorrow, would not be able to address the major issues facing our country, simply stated, because of the incredible power and money of the billionaire class which dominates Washington right now. Now, I'm embarrassed I have to tell you that, but that's simply the truth. All right? You got a media which is corporately owned, which will do everything they can to deflect attentions from our real issues, and you got a Congress which is dependent upon big money campaign contributors in order to get elected, and they will do the bidding of those folks. That's the bad news, but there is a good news. And the good news is, without being overly dramatic, what history tells us is when people stand together and they have the courage to fight back, and when at this moment people stand up and they say, you know what, this country and our government belong to all of us. Enough is enough. The billionaire class can't have it all. And when we do that, we win. It is really not me. I don't mean to be humble and meek here, but it is not me, it is you. It is millions of people. And the question is, at a time when we have a grotesque level of income and wealth inequality, at a time when the billionaire class is now buying our political institutions, are we prepared to say enough is enough? The greed has got to end. If we're going to go forward, we need a progressive agenda which speaks to the hearts and the minds of ordinary Americans. Not complicated stuff. We have to come up with ideas, and I want to hear your ideas, What are the issues out there that bring people together? Understanding that on this or that issue, there may be differences of opinion. There are differences of opinion in this room. Let me touch on it. When you ask the American people, what is the most important issue on their minds? They always respond, in every poll that I have seen, with a four-letter word, J-O-B-S, jobs. Now, why is that? The papers tell you that official unemployment in this country is 5.4%. But that is not what real unemployment is, according to other government statistics. If you include those people who have given up looking for work, discouraged workers, if you include those people who are working part-time when they want to work full-time, and a lot of the new jobs being created are part-time jobs, do you know what real unemployment is in America today? It's close to 11%. Do you know what youth unemployment is in America today? 17%. We never talk about it. I can't remember almost anybody in Congress even raising that issue. Do you know what African American youth unemployment is? It is off the charts. It is off the charts. There are communities in this country where 50% of the African American young people are unemployed. So if we are serious about rebuilding this crumbling middle class of ours, we have got to have a federal jobs program which creates millions of these jobs. What kind of jobs do we create? Well, I think the answer is pretty easy. I can tell you that in my state of Vermont, and I was talking to Bill Glover, the mayor of Davenport, yesterday, who has the same thing to say as mayors in Vermont. Our infrastructure is crumbling, and it's time we rebuild it. The American Society of Civil Engineers, the guys who know something about this, tell us that we need to spend over $3 trillion to rebuild our roads, our bridges, our water systems, our wastewater plants, our airports. We need an enormous amount of work on rail. We're behind Europe, Japan, China on rail. We need to repair and rebuild our levees and our dams. And when you do that, when you make that investment, you make America more productive, you make America more efficient, we make our country safer, and we can create, with $1 trillion investment, up to 13 million decent paying jobs, and that's exactly what we have to do. It is not only creating jobs, it's saving jobs as well. And let me touch on an issue that for many people is not a sexy issue. It's an issue that, to the best of my mind, and this is how bad the situation is, ABC, CBS, and NBC National News has not talked about at all, and that is our trade policy in the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Is trade a good thing? The answer is yes. But what trade should be about is developing relationships with other countries which are mutually beneficial to the workers in our country and the workers in other countries. Not very hard. But as many of you know, virtually all of the trade agreements negotiated in the last 3 or 4 decades by Republican presidents and Democratic presidents have been pushed by every major corporation in this country, pushed by Wall Street, pushed by the pharmaceutical industry, and pushed by the big money interests. And what is the result of these trade agreements? The result of the trade agreements is that over the last, since 2001, we have lost in this country 60,000 factories. Not all of that is attributable to trade, but a lot of it is. You all know what the story is. You're a large corporation. Why do you want to pay an American worker 15, 20, 25 bucks an hour when you could shut down here, move to China, move to Vietnam, move to Mexico, and pay people there pennies an hour? You don't have to obey environmental laws. You don't have to deal with the union. And that is, of course, what every major multinational corporation has done. All of them downsized in the United States, created jobs abroad. In terms of, and I'm proud to tell you that I never believed any of this stuff that the big money interests were telling us about trade, and I voted against NAFTA, against CAFTA, and against the government cooperation. Now we're dealing with TPP, which sadly passed the Senate a week ago, and is now in the House, where we're going to fight hard to see that it's defeated. What is this trade agreement about? Well, in my view, it is the same old, but it goes even a step further. Let me tell you a little bit story about what we call investor-state dispute mechanisms. Sounds complicated, but this is the story. This is what these trade agreements are about. Story. Uruguay, as you know, is a tiny Latin American country. And a few years ago, they had a president who was an oncologist, a guy who knew something about cancer. And he worked very hard with his little country to make it hard for the tobacco industry to sell their poisonous product to the children of Uruguay. That was what he did. He said, I don't want our kids getting hooked on tobacco and nicotine. I don't want them coming down with cancer, emphysema, all these other diseases. And you know what happened to him as a result of a trade agreement which has the same language in the TPP? He was sued in an independent tribunal by Philip Morris. And Philip Morris said it is illegal for you to do this based on a trade agreement because you are harming our future profits. We make in Philip Morris a lot of money by poisoning and killing children. How dare you take away our future profits? And right now, little Uruguay is spending all this money in an independent tribunal based on the same type of language that is in the TPP. So in other words, if local governments, state governments, federal government tries to do the right thing in terms of healthcare, in terms of environmental protection, that says to large profitable corporations, we don't want you to do that, those entities, our people, could be sued by companies like Philip Morris. That does not make sense to me. That is the undermining of democracy, when the future profits of a corporation are more important than the health of our children. Now, when we talk about greed, when we talk about illegal behavior, when we talk about recklessness, these are just a few words to describe what goes on in Wall Street. In my view, it is time to break up the largest financial institutions in this country. Wall Street cannot be an island unto itself, gambling trillions in risky financial instruments while expecting the public to bail it out. If a bank is too big to fail, that bank is too big to exist. Let me touch on another issue, which is of enormous consequence. Some of you know it, some of you may not. That shamefully, the United States of America today is the only major industrialized nation on earth which does not guarantee health care to all of our people. That disgrace must end. In America today, we have seen some progress in a very complicated system called the Affordable Care Act, which I voted for, which has added about 16 more million Americans to the ranks of the insured. That's a good thing. But at the end of the day, we have 35 million Americans today who still have no insurance whatsoever. We have many others, including people in this room, who have large deductibles and large copayments. Is that right? Yes. All right. And the result of that, by the way, is that we have a whole lot of folks who, when they get sick, Because of these deductibles and co-payments, they hesitate going to the doctor. And we lose thousands of people every year who should be going to the doctor but don't because of their concern about the fact that they don't have any money to pay the bills. What do? Well, I think as a nation, we do two things. First of all, we recognize that a human being is a human being. And just because you have one person has money and another person does not mean that one person should get high-quality health care and another person not be able to go to the doctor. Health care is a right for all of us. Challenge is, which is tough work, how do we create a cost-effective, high-quality health care with reasonably priced prescription drugs in the nation? How do we do that? Well, there's a lot to be learned from countries all over the world in that regard. Countries have paved the way. I live in Burlington, Vermont, 100 miles away from Canada. They have their system. UK has their system. Scandinavia has their system. Germany has their system. But all of these systems have this in common. All people get health care as a right. Second of all, none of these systems have private health insurance playing a significant role. So in my view, we have got to move toward a Medicare for all single-payer program. And when we do that, sometimes it is hard to imagine the impact of public policy on people's lives. It really is hard. But it is huge. And I want you just to dream for a moment of what it means if we had a national healthcare system in this country, guaranteed healthcare to all people. It means that when people get sick, they go to the doctor and they get the treatment that they need. When a doctor writes out a prescription, that person can fill that prescription because it will be affordable, not the case right now. What does it mean even for business and small businesses? Right now you have small businesses working tirelessly to try to figure out how they pay for healthcare, spending half their lives trying to figure out what insurance policy is best for their company. If you have a national healthcare system which guarantees healthcare for all people, that's it, it's over. Businesses don't have to worry about providing healthcare. Workers can leave their jobs, go to another job, not stay on jobs which they're not happy with, but are there because of healthcare. I remember a story a few years ago, some kind of guy who was too old re-entered the military. Went back to the, you know why he went into the military? Because his wife had breast cancer. It was the only way that he can get healthcare to take care of his wife. And all over the country, we have people staying in jobs that they're not happy with because of their healthcare benefits. Healthcare must be a right. And we've got to join the rest of the industrialized world in making that happen. Let me give you an update. I speak to you not only as a candidate for president and Vermont senator, but also as the ranking member of the U.S. Senate Budget Committee, which means leader of the opposition. And believe me, there is opposition. And here's, again, media doesn't bother reporting this too much, but I want to talk to you a little bit about the Republican budget, which was passed a few weeks ago. And what I'm going to tell you, some of you may think, well, he's being really partisan. It really can't be this bad. It can't be this true. But it is. It really is. And here's the reality of a Republican budget that was passed just a few weeks ago, which lays the groundwork for the legislation that the various appropriations committees in Congress will be dealing with. At a time when 35 million Americans have no health insurance, the Republican solution to that problem is an extremely interesting one. They say, let's end the Affordable Care Act and cut Medicaid by over $400 billion, the result of which will be to throw another 27 million Americans off of health insurance. That's their solution to the healthcare crisis. And when you say to them, and I do, and I know these guys very well, sit on the same committee, known them for years, and you say, tell me, What happens when you throw 27 million people off of health insurance? Many of them just received insurance fairly recently. How many of them will die? How many of them will become much sicker than they would have had to be? How many of them will suffer? What happens to the children who will lose their health insurance? They have no answer. They have no answer. Because that is not an issue that they are concerned about. In terms of education, let me say two things here. I say here at the University of Iowa. One of the great crises facing this country is the fact that we live in a very competitive global economy. And you don't have to be a PhD in economics to understand that if we're going to compete effectively, if we're going to create the kinds of jobs we need the best educated workforce in the world. Now, in this country today, listen to this, I mean, it's true, it is tragic. And we scratch our heads and we say, what is going on in our country? In this country today, hundreds of thousands of bright, qualified young people who want to learn, who want to go out into the world and establish their careers. They cannot go to college because their families don't have the money for them to be able to pay to go to college. And then on top of that, we have millions of people who recently graduated college, or maybe dropped out of college, people who are middle-aged, who are stuck with the huge and oppressive debts around their necks that last for decades. And I'm talking about huge debt. Last year we had a meeting in Burlington, Vermont, talked to a young woman. Her crime in life was that she wanted to become a medical doctor, primary care physician, and she wanted to work with low-income people. We have a real crisis in primary care in America. That is exactly what we need. We need tens and tens of thousands of doctors going into primary health care. She came out of medical school $300,000 in debt. 2 nights ago in Davenport, I spoke to 2 young dentists, and one of them, a young woman from the area, said, hey, $300,000, I came out of dental school. She's graduating this week, I think. $400,000 in debt. All over this country, young people leaving college, $50,000, $60,000 in debt. Young man in my office who's worked for me for years, left law school, deeply in debt. He's paying 9% interest rates. All right, that's not uncommon, 8%, 6%. That's the way it is. What kind of stupidity is it? First of all, because it says to so many young people, hey, you're never going to make it into the middle class. You're never going to go get the job of your dreams. That's one thing. And the other thing it says, as a nation, how do we compete? How do we have a strong economy when we do not tap the intellectual capabilities of so many of our bright young people? So what's the solution to that? The solution to that is to do what many, many other countries around the world are doing. Not a radical idea. You go to Germany, you go to Scandinavia, you go to countries like Chile, not a wealthy nation. And what they have said, and what we have got to say, if you go to a public college or university, tuition should be free. Here's the other crazy aspect of it. My wife and I were sitting about taking pictures. Hi, Jane. All right, she and I, we refinanced our house, what, a couple years ago? Interest rates were low. We did with millions of families that took advantage of low interest rates, refinanced our home. Right now, if you go out and you buy a new car, what's the interest rate? 1%, 2%? So if that's true, how is that so many people are stuck with 4, 5, 6, 8% interest rates on student debt? So if we're going to lower interest rates on student debt, I have introduced legislation which will allow students, graduates, to refinance their loans to take advantage of lower interest rates. Not unrelated. Years ago, the banks were providing most of the loans, making the profits. Under Obama, he did the right thing. He transferred that process from the banks to the government. So the government is not making the money. But here's the point. We have got to ask ourselves whether the government should be making billions of dollars in profit based on high interest rates going to low and moderate income families. The answer is no. I agree with you. I agree with you. And when we do away with the profit making of the government, we also can lower interest rates. So add it all together, this is what we have got to say as a nation. What we have got to say is education is an essential part of what life is about. We want to be learning until the day we die. We want to be growing intellectually. Also, we want our people to have the best possible standard of living and the highest quality jobs that we can. And in a technologically evolving society, clearly, we need to have a very well-educated workforce. And it makes no sense to me to have policy after policy which literally discourages people from getting the education that makes our country stronger and that improves their lives. So we need to radically rethink the financing of higher education. Let me conclude. I'm not too long. Let me just conclude by saying this. What I want you to do is to think big, not think small. Don't accept the worldview that is presented to you on TV every night, or that the Republicans and their money machine have done a good job in espousing. For example, turn on the TV tonight, some guy in a three-piece suit is going to tell you Social Security is going broke, and we've got to cut Social Security. And the answer is, of course, that's not true. Social Security is not going broke. It's $2.5 trillion, and the trust fund can pay out all benefits for the next 18 years. But the important point is that, A, in terms of Social Security, not only should we not be cutting Social Security benefits, we should be expanding. Not only should we not be cutting Head Start, which is what the Republican budget does, and child care, we have got to have universal pre-K. The points that I want to make is I don't want you to get sucked in to a conservative way of looking at the world. We are the wealthiest nation in the history of the world. That's who we are today. And in the wealthiest nation in the history of the world, 35 million people should not be in a position where they don't have health care. Moms and dads who go to work today should be able to know that their kids are in high quality, affordable child care. Kids who are in the 10th grade right now or in the 6th grade should know that if they study hard and pay attention to their work and do well, they will be able to go to college regardless of the income of their family. Every American should know that in America, this great country, we have to end the horror where today, if a African-American male is born today in a hospital in this country, that baby stands a 1 in 3 chance of ending up in the criminal justice system. That is not it. Now what's happened, and there are very few politicians who will talk about it. Some will, most won't. Media won't talk about it. What has happened in the last 30 years is there has been a huge transfer of wealth from the middle class and the working families of this country, not only to the top 1%, but to the top 1/10 of 1%. And our job is to transfer that wealth back down again to the middle class and the working families. So I want you to dream of an America which says, yes, we have exciting new technology. How do we use it to improve the lives of all of our people? How do we make sure that our little ones do very well in pre-K and in public education? That everybody has the opportunity to go to college? That all of our people have health care as right? Now somebody may say, hey Bernie, that sounds utopian. It's not utopian. We can't afford to do all of those things. And we do it by telling the billionaire class that, sorry, you can't have it all. If you want to be part of America, you have got to accept your responsibilities.
Yeah.
You just can't get the benefits. Right now, we have a tax system that is totally warped to benefit the wealthy and the powerful. And the reason for that is they write tax laws. Right now, we are losing over $100 billion a year because large corporations are stashing their profits in the Cayman Islands, in Bermuda, and other tax havens. In any given year, major profitable corporations, huge corporations, end up paying zero in federal income tax in a given year. Warren Buffett, one of the richest guys in the world, reminds us of the absurdity of him, one of the wealthiest people in the world, paying an effective tax rate lower than his secretary, lower than nurses, lower than truck drivers. And that was the outrage felt by millions. Let me end by saying this. Our challenge is not to argue about how much we cut Social Security, how much we cut Medicare, how much we cut Head Start, and have that vigorous debate. That's not what this is about. Our job is to say that in the wealthiest country on earth, with incredible productivity, how do we lead the world in reversing climate change? How do we guarantee health care for all? How do we make education a right of all people? So I end my remarks by asking you, think big, be involved. Let's make a political revolution. Thank you all. And what he's going to do is run around and take some questions and comments.
Yes, I enjoyed your speech. I agree with everything you said. In terms of single-payer health care, should annual physicals be part of that so that we can keep people healthy and prevent a lot of higher cost treatment?
Good question. And the answer is obviously yes. Look, we have a system. When you have private insurance companies and powerful drug companies who could charge us any price that they want, clearly the system is not geared to keeping us healthy and preventing disease. It makes a lot more sense. And by the way, under the Obama administration and Michelle Obama, we're making some progress in this issue. But it makes a lot of sense to be educating people about nutrition, about how we stay healthy, than rather spending huge sums of money dealing with people who are very sick. So disease prevention, and making sure that people get the checkups that they need is obviously an integral part of any serious healthcare system.
Hi, Mr. Sanders. Thanks for being here today. My question is, how do you plan to deal with an oppositional Congress?
Good. You mean to say you don't think the Republicans will agree with everything I just said? That is a very good question. I'll be very honest with it, because the answer is, it's not just me who's going to have to deal with them, it's you. Okay. Here's the story, I'll tell you the truth. Barack Obama is a friend of mine. I think he has done a good job as President of the United States under enormously difficult circumstances and an unprecedented level of obstructionism from Republicans, okay? And I want to take this opportunity, as I have before, in this state of Iowa, to thank you for doing something that goes down in American history. Iowa, as everybody knows, is almost an all-white state. But in 2008, you had the courage and the decency to say, we're going to vote for somebody not based on the color of his skin, but based on his ideas. With Barack Obama on a number of issues, and I have disagreed with him on a number of issues, including TPP, extending wishes, tax cuts, and so forth and so on. But here's what I want to tell you in answer to your question. In 2008, Barack Obama ran one of the great campaigns in the history of the United States. In Iowa, it was really extraordinary. I mean, people were stunned about the number, when he doubled the number of people who came out of office. Unbelievable. The mistake that Barack Obama made, in my view, I had the opportunity to tell him this. Don't know how happy he was to hear it, but it was my view. Here's this. Because he's a decent guy, he kind of thought that he could get to Washington and sit down with John Boehner, the Republican leadership, and say, look, I'm prepared to sit down with you and compromise. I know I can't get it all, you can't get it all. Let's meet in some middle ground. It took him years to understand that these guys had never any intention of compromising. The truth is, literally, on the day that he was inaugurated, the Republican strategy people came together and said, the best way to beat these guys, Obama and his team, is to obstruct. They used every rule in the book to do that. But unfortunately, as he is a decent guy, and he always kind of, tries to make things happen, he kept trying to negotiate. I think he's learned the lesson finally. All right. And he's using some executive orders. About time. All right. Answer to your question. Let me repeat what I said a moment ago. I can't do it alone. The only way it happens is not when I sit down in a room with Mitch McConnell or John Boehner and say, let's work it out. The answer is when I say to John Boehner, John, open the window and look out the door. Look out that window, and you see 1 million young people out there who are telling you, you better pass legislation which makes tuition free in colleges and universities. John, read your emails and hear from millions of seniors who say, not only you're not going to cut Social Security and Medicare, you're going to expand those programs. So, that's my question. And as I said before, I don't want to depress people, but the truth is, you have to understand this. The billionaire class is extraordinarily powerful. Their campaign contributions, their media controls much of what happens in America. The only way we bring forth a progressive agenda that speaks to the needs of working people is when people themselves become activated. When the politicians can't afford not to listen to the people. I promise you I will do my job. But I absolutely will not succeed if there are not millions of people reactivated and involved in the political process. So that's a long answer to a short question. Okay, we're over.
Can I take a moment just to give a little organizing message? Let me just say, this is an incredible crowd. I really want to thank you all for coming out. A couple things. For people who are moved and want to get involved in this campaign, you know this is going to be a people-powered campaign. So a couple simple things you can do. We had sign-in sheets when you came in. If you weren't able to sign in, we still have those sign-in sheets there. We'll have volunteers taking your name. So please sign in. Take your cell phones out right now. You can just text Bernie, that's what your message is, to 82623. 82623. Very simple thing to do. What does that do? That means every time Bernie comes to Iowa, you'll get a message letting you know where he's going to be. When there are updates on the campaign, you'll get those updates. So it's a really good way, an easy way to stay in touch with the campaign. I encourage you to do that. We have a very good website, and it's going to get even better. We want to make it interactive. We want to hear from you, not just put out stuff, but get you involved in our website and our campaign. That is BernieSanders.com. Go there. It's really good. You can make a contribution. We've had an incredible response. Over 200,000 people have signed up on the webpage. Over 100,000 contributors. Average contribution $43. We would really, we need that help. We're obviously not going to get the help of the billionaires, so we need your help in that respect. Lastly, I just wanted to mention two folks who are working for us in Iowa. We're going to obviously expand our team here. Got some great folks. Pete D'Alessandro, who many of you know, is working with our campaign, and you can contact me. If you want to get involved, send him an email, pete@berniesanders.com. Young guy from Ames, Iowa, Evan Berger, who's been working with the U.S. Student Association, is now on the campaign. His is Evan Berger, B-U-R-G-E-R, at BernieSanders.com. So send them a note. They want to get you involved. We need your help. We can win this thing, but only when you're involved. So end of the commercial there. Thank you.
I want to thank you for your stance on universal health care and emphasis on prevention. 10% of American children have severe mental illness to the point that it's affecting their daily lives. They're not able to function. Wraparound care has been proven to help these kids and reduce what will inevitably be much more expensive incarceration, future homelessness, future joblessness. What will you do as President of the United States to ensure that American children who need it can get wraparound care?
Thank you for calling attention to a very, very serious problem. It is children's mental health issues, and we need to make sure that they all get wraparound care. It means that we have to create a healthcare system which focuses on the real problems facing our country. And healthcare and mental health in general, and children's mental health is certainly one of the major problems. So that is certainly an area we're going to focus on. But you touched on another issue. This is a huge issue. Some of you may know, and some of you may not, that incredibly, and I want you all to think about this. In this country, we have more people, this young woman raised this issue, in jail than any other country in America. Think about it. Why is it that China, for example, 3 or 4 times our size, a communist, authoritarian country, has fewer people in jail than we do? And it has a lot to do with poverty in America. It has a lot to do with mental health situations. This woman is absolutely right. Instead of treating people who have mental health problems, you know what we do? We put them in jail. All right? Instead of providing jobs and education for kids who are hanging out on street corners, we build jails to put them in. That does not make a lot of sense to me. So mental health is a huge issue in this country. I can tell you as a senator, we get calls from people, and they say, I am very worried about my brother. I am worried what he may do to himself or do to somebody else. We cannot get the kind of mental health counseling that we need, that we can afford. That should not be the case. There are a lot of people around this country who are in trouble. And we've got to make sure the doors are open to all of them, to the kids and to others, to get the mental health they need. That is an essential, integral part of any serious healthcare system.
Thanks very much for being here. I'm a veteran for peace. It seems like the one government program that ever lacks for money is the military. And it would seem that we should call it the military rather than the Department of Defense because we haven't had a war of defense since World War II. My question, as we feed this money into the military establishment, it's not just that we are creating an acceptance of perpetual war, but we are robbing the country of resources that could be used for infrastructure, and we're actually making the country more insecure by funding the largest producer of CO2, the largest consumer of fossil fuels. Do you see this as a problem, and can your understanding of this, which is greater than any U.S. senator, be used as leverage against other presidential candidates and fiscally conservative?
Right. Well, it's funny, you raised a dozen important issues. No, everything you said is a very important statement. I just, don't have time to answer all, but you raised a good question. And you may know, again, as a member of the Budget Committee, there was a debate that went on within the Republican ranks. And some of the honest Republican conservatives said, look, we talk about not spending all of this money, but guess what? You can't spend more money on the military. But believe me, they were drowned out very, very quickly by the Hawks. So in fact, in this Republican budget, which cuts funding for healthcare, for education, for Head Start, there's an additional $38 billion for the military, by the way, unpaid for. Second of all of you know or should know that these great Republican deficit hawks who just think we have to cut Social Security and Medicare and education and environmental protection, we just can't afford it. Well, they went to war in Iraq and Afghanistan and they forgot to pay for those wars, which will end up costing us $4 to $6 trillion. Third point, of all of the agencies of the United States government, there is one agency which has not been independently audited. Guess which agency it is. It is an agency in which tens and tens of billions of dollars have gone into cost overruns. It is an agency in which virtually every major defense contractor has been fined for fraud and ripping off the taxpayers or else reach a settlement agreement. So can we go a long way to make the DoD a lot more efficient than it should? Last point. Obviously, our defense system rests on our foreign policy. Okay, you touched on that. I voted against the war in Iraq, and I voted against the first war in Iraq as well. I recently saw a YouTube thing of me speaking on the floor of the House before that war, and I have to say, sadly, that much of what I said turned out to be true. That was a war we never should have gotten into. And you raised another issue. Look, ISIS is a barbaric organization. I want to see them defeated. But if anyone thinks the United States of America can do this alone, if anyone thinks that what is good for this country is perpetual warfare in the Middle East, I would strongly disagree with you. We've got to move in a different direction. A lot of these countries sitting around Iraq, such as Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has the third largest defense budget in the world. You got Turkey sitting there. What you're looking at in the Middle East, which is very complicated, I think the president is trying his best. It is a very difficult situation. But there is a war going on there for the soul of Islam. And those people, the vast majority of people in that region, do not accept this barbaric ideology of ISIS. Those countries are going to have to get their hands dirty. It cannot just be the United States alone.
I really appreciate your attention to the education crisis in this country. This is a city of education. It's the University of Iowa. And I'm wondering what you can say about the crisis in higher ed hiring. We have adjunct workers who are being exploited, particularly in the arts. When you say we cannot reject science, it seems we we must also not reject the arts.
Absolutely.
So I'm wondering what you can say about humanitarian specifically and this terrible crisis for both students and for people. You talk about dream jobs too, so things of that nature, please.
Thank you. The worldview or the mindset being perpetrated by the big money interest is the following. We have a serious financial crisis, don't move. We have a serious financial crisis, and just we're going to have to cut Social Security and education. Let's debate, we cut the science teacher for the arts teacher. What do you think? That's really the choices we have to make. Do we get rid of language, or do we cut the athletics program? Let's have that debate. That is a false debate. The real debate is, what do we do with the fact that 99% of all new income is going to the top 1%, and these guys are not paying their fair share of taxes? The real debate, the good debate, by the way, I happen to be on the Health, Education, Labor, and Pension Committee, which deals with elementary and secondary education. I will do everything, and by the way, we have bipartisan support to end this disastrous No Child Left Behind program. People disagree about education, but clearly we have got to prioritize and say that in a civilized democratic society, education goes to the top of the list. It is what a democratic civilized society is about, and we can argue the best way to do it. I don't have all of the answers, but certainly making sure that our kids are involved in cultural activities is hugely important. How do you have an education without? We're not training robots or machines. All right, so let's redefine the role of education in our country. I know, I say this in Iowa with trepidation, football players are not the only heroes. We have a lot of teachers out there. I come from New England, the Patriots won the Super Bowl, we love Tom Brady, but in terms of hero worship, maybe we also want to thank the child care workers who are underpaid, and the incredible work they do.
Bernie, I want to thank you for coming and also for identifying climate change as one of your key issues. What I'd like to hear from you is how you think we can best tackle climate change.
First of all, there is, I mean, the bad news is obviously that if we don't act boldly, there will be severe damage done to our planet. The good news is that in many ways, I think we know how to address the problem. And the more, in years to come, we'll have better technology and even more knowledge. But here's, first of all, this is a world problem, not just an American problem. You could spend it. Second of all, so we have to be a leader in the world. Second of all, what do we have to do? We need a tax on carbon. Those people who are now, there has to be a disincentive to those people in the coal industry, the oil industry, etc., who are putting up huge amounts of carbon into the atmosphere. Third of all, and we've introduced legislation with Senator Boxer of California to do that. Third of all, we need to move aggressively into energy efficiency and sustainable energy. Now, Iowa is doing a good job in wind. Vermont happens to be doing a good job in solar. We've introduced legislation for 10 billion solar rooftops. There are already solar plants in the southwest of this country that provide electricity for hundreds of thousands of people from solar. We have got to move aggressively in those areas. And when we do that, we can not only significantly cut our use of carbon and our emission of carbon, we can lead the world in doing that. So that's some of what I think we have got to do.
Thank you, Senator. A growing number of Americans are concerned about the $3.4 billion we send yearly to Israel, and it's going to be 4.6 soon. And I'm wondering what Sanders administration might be prepared to help to use that as leverage to end the illegal occupation of Palestine.
What is going on between the Israelis and the Palestinians is an incredible tragedy that has gone on decades and decades. We just saw the last war, which is horrible. As many of you know, or should know, maybe know, I did not attend the speech that Netanyahu gave. At the same time, I am not all that crazy about the leadership within the Palestinian people as well. But your point is that the United States provides a lot of money to that region. And I think with that resources, we've got to demand that the leadership of Israel, the leadership of the Palestinian area, sit down and start doing some serious negotiations, which to my mind includes the end of these settlements in the Palestinian territory. That is calls for a two-state solution. The Palestinian people are entitled to their own state and their own economy, which should be helpful to them. Israel is entitled to live in peace and security. I mean, those are the parameters. That's what we're talking about. Yes, ma'am.
I worked for 9 years for a government contractor. I did the 1-800 Medicare line, and I want you to know that the companies who have run 1-800 Medicare, Bangen, and now General Dynamics operate a sweatshop. I'm now on disability with severe depression and can't work because of having worked there. And I want to know what you might do to move some of these contracts back to the government so that instead of paying CEOs, we can pay workers decently and have better working conditions.
What the right-wing agenda has been about is to destroy the ability of government to provide services and push them into the private sector. Now, that is some good news about what we're trying to do. And I share your concern. I was a mayor who resisted all kinds of efforts to privatize, because I believe at the end of the day, not perfect, but the most cost-effective way we can deliver government services is with a well-paid, well-trained government employee. So that's my your issue. It turns out, we didn't know this until a couple of years ago, that the United States, that the taxpayers of America end up being the largest employer of low-wage labor in America. And it's not, you know, what you think of, that's like the postal service or normal government jobs. There is a huge amount of contracting out, which is what the woman is talking about. So you have companies that deliver services with government taxpayer who are paying starvation wages. So what many of us worked on, I was involved in demonstrations in DC, is to say that when the government signs a contract with a private employer, at the very least, that employer has got to pay $10.10 an hour minimum wage. We are now putting pressure on the president to raise that to $15 an hour.
It's not the money, it's the way every quarter they cut the amount of time we have to take this call.
Well, the other thing that we're trying to do, I got your point, and you're right. The other thing that we're trying to do is to say that the government should give, and I hope the president moves in this area, we're putting pressure on him and I hope that he will, is that if you're a private contractor on the government, normally the process is, what is the lowest amount of money that the government pays to get the contract? You're outbidding other people, right? You're coming in cheaper. We sign you. And we're saying that shouldn't be the criteria. What we also want to see is who is paying $15 an hour, who is going to not oppose the effort for workers to form a union. The lowest bid. That's what we're trying to do. All right, maybe two more questions. Phil Roy. Okay.
Hi, my name is Sean, and one of the things that really bothers me is money in politics. And one of the things that I keep hearing about is we have to have a constitutional amendment to the Constitution. There are a couple different mechanisms what specifically are you going to follow? Is it with the Senate? Is it going state by state? What are the specific mechanisms that you would seek to accomplish that?
Well, if we have to do it well, let me just start off by saying I believe we need a constitutional amendment. We have to go down the path of a constitutional amendment, which gets started in Congress and goes to the states. So that's what we've got to do. But while we're on that, and that's going to take a while. And by the way, there are something like 15 or 16 states that are already on record prepared to vote on that. There are hundreds of cities around the country which support that. But there's something else that we can do short term that will be somewhat of an impediment against big money in politics. And that is when the Koch brothers and other billionaires put all these ugly 30-second ads on TV. I gather you in Iowa have seen one or two of those ads, right? Okay. Then maybe we pass legislation. This is, not the whole fix by any means, which has them put their pretty faces on that ad saying, "I am David Koch, I approve that ad."
I'm the president of the Grad Union at the University of Iowa. We have a big contingent of our members here today, and we appreciate your comments and education. I wanted to ask you a question about a pressing issue in the United States that the university has refused to discuss, and we think is a national issue of concern, which is paid maternity leave. This is
All right, here's the story, guys. What we don't discuss, there's a lot that we as a nation can and should be very, very proud of. There's a lot that we should not be proud of. And what smart people and well-educated people do is look all over the world to see what other countries are doing that work a little bit better, right? I was a mayor, and what mayors do is they steal ideas from other mayors. We do things in Vermont very well, or the state say, "Hey, that's working in Burlington, Vermont, let's take that idea." That's the concept of taking best ideas. How many of you know that on a long, long list of countries, the United States is one of the very few that does not provide paid maternity leave? So if you are in Scandinavia, if you are in Europe, it goes without saying that when you have a baby, and I get a kick out of this because many of my Republican friends, they're big into family values. They just love families. So in this country, if you don't have a whole lot of money, and you have a baby, you got to rush back to work, you got to figure out where you're going to send your baby. You don't have the opportunity to bond with your baby. The father doesn't have an opportunity to bond with the baby. So what other countries around the world do is they say, "Hey, we understand that here in this country, we passed, the Family Medical Leave Act, which says that if you work for a certain size company, we're going to get you 13 weeks? You're not going to get fired if you take 13 weeks off." And by the way, to pass that, we have to overcome, I think, a veto for the first Bush. This is such a radical idea. Of course, that's the point. So the point is that if you don't have a lot of money, you can't take 13 weeks off. So the country of family values is telling a working class mom, have the baby, rush that baby into childcare, and you better get back to work right away. We are going to introduce, funny thing is that we're working right now on very broad and comprehensive legislation that will learn a lot from countries around the world, which say to women, when you have a baby, you can stay home, you can bond with your baby, fathers should have that opportunity as well, and you know what? You're going to get paid to do that. You're going to not be paid. This is a great meeting, and I want to thank all the people in this room and the many people who couldn't get in here for being here. And here's the point. Please don't think small. Remember, we are, again, the richest nation in the history of the world. And we have to deal with this issue of distribution of wealth and distribution of income. And when we begin to do that, we then do have the resources to deal with maternity leave, to deal with the mental health needs of our kids, to make sure that every veteran who comes back from a war gets the health care that he or she needs. But we can't do those things when the top 1/10 of 1% owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. You can't do those things when the billionaire class He's trying to buy the political process. It's hard to do those things when corporate media doesn't focus on the important issues facing our country. So my message today is let's make a political revolution. Why not? Let's do it. Not because I'm a humble person, trust me, I am not. When you're in the United States Senate, by definition, you have a huge ego. Okay? I can't do this alone. I can't win the election by myself. I can't govern by myself. It will not happen. So what the political revolution means that each and every person here and in America, in his or her own way, has got to figure out how do we get other people to understand that what happens at our state capitals, what happens in Washington, is of enormous importance. Don't let anybody say to you, God, why did you go to a dumb meeting with some senator no one has ever heard of and wasted your time? You're not wasting your time. You're doing what is most patriotic. You're standing up for America, you're standing up for democracy, and that's what we've got to do. Thank you all.